I'm Paul, half of Dads and Dice, and today we're going to be talking about Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies. This is the standalone sequel to the original Sleeping Gods, and in this one, it's 1937, San Francisco. You and your crew members all of a sudden fly through a portal into a distant world. In this world, you find creatures, unknown lands, and you're going to do everything you can to explore them and find out what is going on and how to get back to your lives. Let's see a little bit more about this game. Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies is the standalone sequel to the original Sleeping Gods that came out a couple years ago. In this game, you are a crew on a cargo airplane that all of a sudden got sucked through a portal and they came out to some unknown land. They crash landed their plane. As they get out, they start trying to explore this land and find a way to get back home. To get back home, you need to find different totems. If you're playing the short game, it's 5. If you're playing the long game, it's 9. These totems give you specific abilities and different upgrades that you can do. You're also going to be searching the land and finding different quests. Some might be some side quests that you go on. Some might be directly led in the story that kind of drives you towards the ending. Some of these are just completely one-offs that you can do or just completely ignore. This game doesn't really have a definitive endpoint per session. You can pretty much call it the end of the session or just continue playing until your heart desires and until you've had enough of it. This game is really narrative driven, and everything that you read builds onto that story. Again, it might not be directly to the main path that you're trying to do, but these little quests can build up to these quests, and what you do in this little town, you might get later in another little town. So everything is pretty well interconnected. Throughout the campaign, you're going to be leveling up your characters and trying to make them stronger or smarter or more cunning, and all of these things are going to help you with your skill checks at a later event. Some of these things are going to give you extra abilities that you can do maybe during combat or maybe during difficult terrain, right, to ignore some of those things. So as you build up these characters, you start feeling more of a connection with them, and things start getting easier, and maybe Miguel is the person that needs to be going to this, and then Jessie, she's very strong, and she's got all the strength, but she's also got all the repair, so anything that has to do with that, we have to use her. So these characters really build up, and towards the end of the game, it really feels like you've gone from barely being able to do anything to at the end just being able to do pretty much anything that you want, and that's a really good feeling that you get to kind of experience from beginning to end. So let's talk a little bit about the gameplay and the game flow. So the game is very simple. On your turn, you draw 2 ability cards, and these ability cards can either be tucked under your character to build them up, or they can be spent for your skill checks, or they're actually flipped over to determine your fate as well. After you've drawn your ability cards, you will then draw the event. Some of these events are bad, some of them are good, some of them are just kind of something that is ongoing. And for these events, you have to do some type of skill check, or you might have to move the plane from one place to the other, and you can determine if you actually want to use your stamina tokens to have a character participate in this skill check, or you can just decide and see if fate will let you pass it, just by flipping over a card and seeing what the number is. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Generally, if it doesn't work, you get some type of status on you. So it could be, chicken, which lets you not attack in battle, or it could be madness, or, just any of those kind of statuses that will stay on you. There's ways to remove those. For the most part, you're kind of stuck with them, at least for a little bit of time. Once that event passes, then you actually go on to your actions. And your actions can be done in any order, but you have to have a certain amount of time to perform them. So one of the things you can do is travel, and that's obviously just moving across the map. You spend 1 time to move 1 square, and the map has this really cool grid on it that lets you, move orthogonally adjacent. Once you get to a spot that has some numbers on it, you can actually explore, and that's reading from that narrative text and reading part of that story, possibly going up against some bosses or possibly going up against some type of monster, maybe unlocking some quests, maybe getting some totems. It's all kind of up to the book to see what happens. You can also travel to further lands. If you can't travel there, you can fly to further lands by using your little airplane. And with this airplane, you will lose fuel. It costs you your time as well. Obviously, once you fly away, it damages your plane. So the other action that you can do is repair that airplane. As your characters go through battle, as they explore the lands and they start losing health, and you notice that all of your characters are down in a bad place, you can always camp. And camping is really the timer of the game. There's a certain number of camps that you can do. Once you've used up all of your camps, that's the end of your campaign. Towards the beginning of the game, it feels like you're camping a lot. Towards the end of the game, when you've built up those characters, that camp action kind of doesn't happen as frequently. And so you can really extend that gameplay a little bit more. After you've done your actions, that's the end of the turn. You pass it to the next player, and they start back over from the top. Let's talk about the rules and references a little bit for this game. So the rules and references, they were pretty simple to read. I will say the rulebook was pretty thick, but it did give a pretty good description of every action and how it works. What I really enjoyed about this game was the very beginning. So once you start it, you have this introduction kind of comic that walks you through everything. It walks you through the setup, and then it walks you through a couple of the first actions. It tells you the actual theme of the game when you're going through that portal, and then it gives you even an example of combat that you can go through. And that really, really helped out with that first session of the game. I read the rule books, my wife didn't read it, but that introductory chapter really kind of helped her get the feel of how it goes. After 1 or 2 moves, you know exactly what you're going to be doing. Let's talk about setup here. Setup was not the worst game that I've ever set up, but it did take some time for me to set it up. Thankfully, I've got a gaming table that I can leave things set up, and if you do invest in this game, I highly recommend you having somewhere where you can leave it set up and not have to take it down from game to game. Now, if you do have to, there is a really cool save paper that lets you write down everybody's health, lets you write down how many stamina tokens there are, where your airplane was, where all the health is. So all that information that you do need. But I will say getting it back to the table will probably be a little bit harder than just leaving it set up at one point. The game does take up quite a bit of space, and since you are leveling up characters, since you are gaining quest cards and different totems, that table space is actually going to expand. So we played on a probably 3.5 by 3.5. And I would say that is probably the absolute smallest that you can play this game on. We were able to stack all of our quests and kind of peek at them and have a little bit of the cards showing to be able to tell what we were doing. But I will say, even doing that, there were a couple things that we missed just because it was hidden a little bit, because we weren't able to spread those cards out throughout the entire we didn't have enough room to spread all those cards out. So I think the 3.5 by 3.5, it did work, but it's not the most optimal table size for the game. Now let's talk about the components that were in the box. And we did get the deluxe version of this game, and the components are amazing. They're awesome. We've got these little miniatures for every little character on there. and you've got the little miniature for the airplane. Now, I will say that is a little overboard because the only times you're using the character miniatures is during these wandering quests, and all you're doing is just putting them out on one spot and then you're bringing them back. Now, the main character, Claire, she is going to be out on the map and then moving around, so you are moving that one, so that definitely does make it a little bit more appealing. They do have this quest box here, this magnetic quest box that lets you have all of the cards in there, all of the quests, and then all of the adventure cards that you gain. That's really nice, a really nice way to keep it organized. There's also the completed quests where you put all the ones that you've completed in here. All the boards are done really nice. They're double-sided and nice and thick. You've got the actual map, which is this bound journal, and it's got all the different pages. I'm sorry, that's the actual narrative. But you've got all the pages in here. Then you've got the map, which is another bound book. And this one has, all the different things in there. And it's really easy to go from one page to the other. And it makes it just really nice to have on that table and moving through. There are some dice in there. You've got your health markers. You've got your resources that you might gain. And all those little chits are nice. You just got to keep them kind of organized to the side. Because, again, there is a lot to it. And it is going to take up a lot of table size. But the components really make the game feel nice. So let's get into my actual thoughts for this game. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I absolutely love this game. If I would have played this one in 2023, this would have been my number one game released last year. This is a very heavy narrative, story-driven game. And that's what I absolutely love. The fact that you are just exploring the land and reading this text and you're visualizing yourself in this unknown land, it just makes me very happy, and it makes me just kind of delve into that game, and I'm in this fantasy world just kind of exploring and going along with these characters. I enjoy games to where you start off with really nothing, and then at the end, you've built up something that you're proud of. So during our game, I had Azarius, and he was the strong man of the group. I think at the end, he had 6 or 7 strength abilities on him of the little skill markers. And so anytime any strength thing would come out, he was our man, and he was pretty much able to do anything that involved strength. He also has some skills that was, anytime you explore, you're gaining health. So his health was never really in danger. And anytime anybody had to take damage, it was like, oh, just let Azarius do it. He's going to build that health back up. The airplane mechanic of flying from one place to another, that was really nice because you had your pilot, and he could pilot that plane without anybody there if you were far away from it, or if you were close, you'd be able to fly to a different piece of land and just kind of explore that land. Every single map felt completely different. You had the tundra, and in that tundra there was tons of terrain that was difficult to surpass. And then you had Stormlock City, which you were kind of going through alleys and going in sewers and underground and meeting, locals that were giving you these little quests. And then you had the undiscovered locations that anytime you'd go there, it was just something completely brand new. This game was super unexpected. A lot of times, I think our second or third action of the game, we had a combat, and it came out, and we were just like, there's no way that we can defeat this. I think all of our characters got down to 3 health or less, and like I said, this was probably our third turn of the game, and we were just like, there's no way that we can beat this game. And then at the end, we defeated that boss, and it was barely a struggle just because we had built ourselves up so much. And after 17 and a half hours of gameplay, that's kind of what you want. You don't want to be struggling at that point. And again, going back to starting from nothing and ending with something big, that was the perfect ending for me, and it was something that I really, really enjoyed. Is this game good for you? I think if you're a person like me that is really into that story and really into the narrative, I definitely think that this is a game for you. This game's mechanics are not very hard once you understand the flow of the game, which again, giving this intro comic book, and then on the back you have the references. There's even a rule pop that gives you, if you need something specific, you can go to that rule pop. I think if you are into a narrative driven game that's kind of low on the mechanics, this is definitely a game for you. If you are wanting to not read a novel pretty much every time that you explore, if you want something that's a little bit deeper in the mechanics, this game might not be for you. Devin and I actually kind of disagree on this one. This is one that he will probably not play again because he doesn't want to read the text every time he explores. For me, this is one that I'm definitely going to be setting up at another time in the near future to go through a completely different campaign and explore a completely different part of the world that I didn't get to experience. So that's it. That is my thoughts on Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. Again, it's definitely a game for a specific type of player. I think I am that specific type of player. It's a game that I am very glad that I got to play, and it's a game that I know I will continue to play in the future. That's it for me. As always, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really does help us. It helps our channel grow. See you on the next one.